Why, hi there, guys. Happy Saturday. And I'm coming to you again once from Northern California, lovely Northern California area. And today I'm talking about comic books. Normally on my YouTube channel, I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons and gaming, primarily like RPG and retro RPG D&D content. But today I wanted to talk about comic books, and in particularly comic books from the annual free comic book day promotion, which again it's going to come up this year again. I'm not exactly sure if this year, because of COVID, they've been moving the dates around, but it's traditionally in May, in the early late spring, early summer time of the year. And one of the reason why this video came about is um I have always been a uh, comic book lover and a comic book reader throughout my life. For a while, I was working for a web company, or a website that unfortunately no longer exists. But I did a lot of reviews of comic books. This was about, oh, it's been over 10 years now, since I was really fully into it, and then I had other interests and um, stopped really reviewing comics on a general basis. Mostly because I stopped buying them and I stopped reading them. Part of it was an economical decision. Comic books, when I started reading them back in the day, were like 60, 70 cents or so, and they didn't come in the glossy type um, paper that they do now, which is harder to produce and drives the cost um, way up. But also because I was kind of I don't know the right term, but I was really feeling as though Marvel and DC and some of the big companies, even like Dark Horse and some of the other more modern, um or yeah, some of the more modern publishing, Boom Press, all these type of publishers, but specifically with the big two, Marvel and DC, we're not really offering a lot of creative. I mean, not exclusively across the board, but they stop really writing and producing the types of stories that I really enjoyed. I don't know how to describe it. It's like more of a personal choice, or um, more than aesthetics, or more than just the books themselves. I started even unofficially calling Marvel the House of Ideas. I started saying and writing that Marvel kind of was running out of ideas because they seem to regurgitate a lot of the same things. Um, they were doing a lot of bringing back a lot of the good, interesting comic creations that they had in the past, but not with the exception. There's always an exception to the rule, and one exception was the like some runs on comics like Amazing Spider-Man. I think like Dan Slott and some of the creators on that book were coming up new villains and new interesting situations after the some of the debacles, some of the uh, things that they didn't do right, like on that book, such as One More Day and stuff like that. Everybody knows that those type of storylines that were not well received. And then they sort of hit the reset button. But overall, I lost. There was a lot of Marvel was rebooting their books. It seemed like every couple of years, so that it could coincide with some type of marketing or one of the movies that were putting out, or there was more of an emphasis of the books following the films. They even changed Nick Fury to look like the actor that plays him in the MCU movies, which is fine. It's called synergy and it's a good business decision. But overall, I thought the creative part of it was a little weak, overall, with a lot of the titles. So that's the reason why, one of the main reasons I stopped. I also, it's the scarcity of the product. Living in NorCal, we did have a local comic book store, but you have to drive out of your way to get to Ukiah and other areas where you can pick up the books on a weekly basis, and I just wasn't feeling it. So that's why I stopped. But I never stopped picking up free books during the free comic book day. And I gave some of the books to my friends so that they could get into comics and always support the industry that way. Um, I kept some of the other ones for myself, and I did have a stat. Sometimes I would just go and pick up books, the comic books, from different promotions, like the Halloween promotion and Free Comic Book Day and other promotions, and I just never read them. You know, I have stacks and stacks of books dating back to 2014, I think. Um, I got a lot of books, you know, and one of my goals or resolutions was to get back into the hobby and to get back into reading comics in 2022, because life is short and you should do the things that you enjoy. Was my reasoning, and so in an attempt to do that, I do have a comic book blog that I hadn't updated for several years, and I think that what I'm gonna do moving forward is updating that blog with some reviews, some commentary, whatever I find interesting regarding the comic book industry. And I'll put a link to this to that blog on this video, on the description of this video. And I'm also hoping that I can get to do some um, interviews with some other content creators on YouTube that I like, such as Comic Uno and you know others of that ilk. Because there's a lot of content about comic books and as part of like nerd or geek culture, wherever you have it on the interwebs, on the YouTubes, and on the social media platforms for sure. And so one comic book a day, that is my commitment. And the blog will sort of expand on whatever I don't touch upon here on the channel. Um, or maybe I'll do like a couple of books, video books a week, but definitely one post about comics every day from now on the blog. And like I said, there will be a link on the description if you're interested in checking those out. I think I'll also supplement it with some of the previous posts that I've created regarding comic book characters or comic books in the past. We'll see how it goes. A lot of it is contingent upon time and other factors, of course. But that's what I want to get back into, and that's what today's video is all about. Okay, let's we start our examination with of the free comic books with Silver number one, and Silver actually came out in 2018, 4 years. That's how old most some of these are. Um, and it's by Stephen Frank. I tried looking up some reviews online, but I didn't really find too many, so I don't know how popular it really was. Some of this material dates back to 2013, and I think it was recapped in a four-issue trade paperback, if I'm not mistaken. But he got some good reviews. I mean, Tim Sale, who wrote or who worked on who's one of the creators on Batman: The Long Halloween, said that Stephen Frank with this comic shows how much excitement can be packed into a fast-moving, thrill-filled story, and it's a really fun ride. Um, Nerdist said that it's a comic that you have to read, so I did read it. Um, and it's the first chapter starts out with the main character by the name of Finnegan. By the way, this is a black and white comic book, and it's written and illustrated by Stefan. I think I was saying the name wrong. Stefan Frank. And see, so what's the premise behind it? Well, basically, um, it begins as a pulp era noir. It's kind of like a noir heist story, um, but it also teases vampire lore. And you guys know I'm a sucker for good vampire fiction. Um, and basically, what it's about is that years ago, Professor Abraham Van Helsing visited Dracula's castle, and now his descendant, um, the mysterious vampire hunter Rosalind Van Helsing, um, is teaming up with a master thief. Oh, by the way, this is set in the 30s, 1931, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a bit of a time period piece, a bit of a period piece as well. So Rosalind Van Helsing teams up with James Finnegan, and they form a ragtag group of con men for a high stakes heist to rob Europe, Europe's richest vampires. So it's basically described as a globe-trotting graphic novel series which mashes up or combines the world of Bram Stoker's classic novel, Dracula, with action, adventure, humor, pulp, uh, storytelling, and modern sensibilities. Like I said, it's collected into like a 4 volume set of trade paperbacks. But for the free comic book day 2018, they gave the like a little sample, like the first chapter of the trade. Um, so it begins 40 years after the events of Dracula in the 30s, New York City, where they introduce a new character who's the con man, and he's like a master thief by the name of James Finnegan, and he kind of begins the story by trying to rob a children's charity auction. So he's not this is not a good character. He has moral ambiguities, morally ambiguous character. Um, so the items up for auction are from the Harker family, and of course, you know, people that read the Dracula novels or know anything about Dracula, so that surname will, you know, ring familiar. Um, so thanks to a strange discovery at the end of the first chapter, which is kind of like the book that I have, and it's the black and white introduction to the story. Um, our door opens on a new mysterious world of mortal undead danger and fortune untold. Basically, the whole thing deals with like how this Finnegan character, Finnegan, is trying to rob the auction, and there's an elaborate plan, and the FBI gets involved, and at the end, he's trying to hide. Um, uh, he's trying to find a hiding place, and he stumbles on this kind of weird kid. Um, his name is Tao, and he's like a boy who helps him out. He helps him how to, to hide from the people that are pursuing him. And Tao turns out to be alone in the world, and he's quite the scoundrel in training. Um, but he has an uncanny ability, the book says, to see the future. So he can see the future other than his own. Um, and so that might be helpful to Finn. And so they have a trio of characters. Excuse me. They have Finn, and they have Tao, and they have the lady, the lady with the sword, Van Hel, also known as Sledge. Her nickname is Sledge, but she's also known as Rosalind Van Helsing, which, as I mentioned before, she's the famed professor's granddaughter. The last of the Van Helsings. Um, so basically, she kind of carries on the family tradition of getting rid of the vampires scourge, the vampires in the world. But it appears that she may have spent a little too much time lurking in the cemeteries, making sure that the dead are staying dead, and she's pretty close to having a complete spiritual burnout. This is how they describe it. Um, she's not someone that is easy to access, but she eventually warms up to Finn's schemes. So the whole this whole first chapter is about the heist, how it's going wrong, or what's happening during the heist. Finn has to try. How the FBI gets involved, and Finn has to find an escape route, and he stumbles upon some magic shit. Um, Basically that's the story in a nutshell. Um, There's also the vampires, which are not introduced in the first chapter, but if you pick up the trade paperback, you can read more about the vampires. Chief among them is, of course, Dracula. And in this version, Dracula is a particularly crazy vampire with um, excuse me, there's also another vampire named Lillian, and basically the vampires in the Silver story or universe are described as bottomless pits of self-indulgent nihilism covered under a thin romantic veneer, and watching them struggle with their own existential choices, the creators say is going to be great fun. So there's some very cool gothic and horror elements, but it's more of an epic adventure. It's not really necessarily horror, but more sort of like a noir adventure type comic blended in with some horror elements. It's the best way I can describe it. Um, and I don't know what happens next because um, after 22 pages, whatever the first comic is, it just ends. And then there's a teaser saying that you can have more fun with this romantic gothic take on Dracula. And Silver, um, the pulp up, it's a pulp adventure, and it's an epic set piece because it's set in the world, in the 19 New York 1930s. And then there's a tease to all um, the four trade paperbacks. I guess Volume 4 went on sale in October of 2018, or at least that was the plan. They're about 112 pages each, and black and white, and they retail for about $13. Actually, number three is longer. It's about over 152 pages, and it's black and white at 16.99. Um, so what do I think? ComicCon.com said it was the ultimate gothic noir comic saga. That's the way they described it. And Newsarama described it as an excellence in comic book form. I thought it was okay. I mean, I don't know if the story gripped me enough so that I would continue. I think part of this video series is what I do is research more of these comics that were offered for free. And by this time, it's been a couple of years. Some of these, this specific case goes back to 2018. And if I like what I'm reading, then maybe tempted to pick up like a trade paperback um, periodically. Um, uh, this one is rated T14. It was all right. Um, I like. I don't. I want. I'm not gonna say that the characters that were introduced were super interesting, but it's only the first comic. Maybe it gets better after. Um, I like the Van Helsing Dracula vampire connection, but it's been done a whole lot. So they try to put a new twist on it, and that might be interesting. I think back of like Marvel's Tomb of Dracula is still my favorite, where they have um, the Van Helsing character, and they introduced Blade, the vampire hunter, for the first time. So people don't know that Blade, um, before he even appeared in other movies or whatever, he was a side character that was introduced in Marvel's Tomb of Dracula comic from the 70s. And so I it's there's a different twist to it. It's more noir than horror. But by the way, this is published by Dark Planet. Dark Planet is the publisher, in case you're interested in checking out their website, or you can Google and get more information on Dark Planet. So let me know in the comments if you read this comic, if you picked up any of the trade paperbacks. Does it stand out? Is it something that you recommend? At this point, I'm 50-50. I don't really, I'm not really, I want to learn more, but I don't know if I would be tempted enough to pick up uh, the trade, maybe one of the trade paperbacks. Maybe I will, but I don't know if I would do the whole series at this point, or four trade paperbacks, unless the first one was really gripping and, just was really into it. So anyway, that's my review. It's not really a review, but my commentary on Silver, number one, which was republished and offering for Free Comic Book Day. I believe it was Free Comic Book Day 2018, published by Dark Planet. And again, if you're familiar with this comic, if you know about it, you go ahead and let me know more. And if you like this content, go ahead and hit the like and or subscribe. I'm going to be making more, and I'm definitely going to be updating the blog, and put the link to the blog on the description. So take care, YouTube.